There's a difference between people who explode under pressure and those who breathe through it. We've all seen it. The person who remains calm in chaos, who speaks slowly when everyone else is shouting, who seems to have a quiet power even in the loudest rooms. What makes them different? It's not luck, it's not magic, it's mindset. A strong mind isn't something you're born with, it's something you build. And the way you build it is by choosing, over and over again, to master yourself before trying to manage the world around you. There is a moment in every high-pressure situation when the room goes quiet, not because it's actually silent, but because something within chooses silence. That moment is where strength begins. It's not in the yelling, not in the reaction, not in the need to take control of everything happening outside. It's in the stillness we choose inside. Strong minds are not built in comfort. They're forged in fire, but not the fire of reaction, the fire of discipline, reflection, and internal clarity. And the people who move through life with a calm presence aren't void of chaos. They've just mastered the ability to create clarity inside it. When everything around us is rushing, screaming, colliding, the natural instinct is to speed up with it, to raise our voice to match the noise, to act quickly in hopes of stopping the damage. But this instinct is often where the mistake is made. Clarity doesn't come from chaos. It comes from the decision to slow down when everything else is speeding up. It comes from training the mind to think clearly even when emotions are loud, because emotions, as powerful as they are not always right. They're real, but they're not always rational. And those who stay composed in the face of stress don't do so because they don't feel anything. They do it because they've created a system of thinking that allows them to separate what's true from what's temporary. The ability to stay clear-headed in difficult moments doesn't happen by accident. It's intentional. It's the result of knowing that feelings are not facts, and that not every emotion needs an immediate reaction. Strong minds build space between what they feel and what they do. That space is where clarity lives. That's where decisions become wise. When we don't build that space, we end up reacting to the situation instead of responding to it. And reaction is often an emotional echo, not a thoughtful action. It's what we say when we feel provoked. It's what we do when fear is louder than logic. But those with calm minds know that the real strength is not in reacting quickly, it's in responding deliberately. Clarity is not the absence of emotion. It's the ability to see through it, to hold it, to understand it, and then to act with wisdom. And that kind of clarity is only possible when we've learned the value of pausing. One breath, one beat, one moment between stimulus and response. The pause is not a delay, it's a strategy. It's what separates those who regret what they say from those who lead with intention. That pause gives us access to something we don't get when we're rushing: perspective. In that breath, we can ask the most important question of all: what does this situation really require from me right now? There's nothing weak about pausing. It's not hesitation, and it's not avoidance. It's awareness. And awareness is power. When we pause, we shift from emotional to intentional. We give ourselves a chance to step out of the storm, even if only for a moment, and decide how we want to engage with it. Most people don't realize how many things could be avoided: arguments, stress, regrets, if they simply paused before they spoke or acted. The strong mind recognizes that the moment between trigger and response is where leadership happens. It's where maturity is revealed. It's where peace is chosen. Learning to pause is not always easy. In fact, it goes against what many of us have been taught. We've been raised in systems that reward speed, that praise immediate action, that equate slowness with weakness. But what we don't often hear is that some of the worst decisions in life are made quickly and emotionally. Some of the deepest regrets begin with the words, "I didn't think, I just reacted." And so, strong minds challenge the culture of urgency. They don't buy into the myth that fast is always better. They understand that in high-stakes moments, a fast reaction might feel satisfying, but a calm response will be far more effective. And it's not just about crisis moments. The pause applies everywhere. It's in conversations with people we love, when they say something that hurts. It's in business decisions when pressure is high. It's in traffic, in meetings, in disagreements. That moment of pause is the same, regardless of context. And every time we choose it, we reinforce the habit of clarity. Every time we take a breath before speaking, before judging, before acting, we create a little more space between who we were and who we're becoming. Strong minds aren't built in a day, they're built in moments. And the pause is one of the most powerful moments we can train ourselves to use. This doesn't mean we suppress emotion. It means we learn to carry it with care. Strong minds are not cold minds. They're compassionate, thoughtful, measured. They feel deeply, but they don't let those feelings run the show. Instead, they honor emotion without becoming consumed by it. They say, "I see what I'm feeling, I understand it, and I'm going to choose how I act." That's clarity. That's strength. And it's only possible when we slow down enough to see clearly. The mind that reacts quickly is often driven by fear. The mind that pauses is guided by purpose. And the more we practice the pause, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, it stops feeling like a tactic and starts feeling like second nature. We stop rushing to speak. We stop needing to fix everything instantly. We start trusting that clarity comes not from controlling every situation, but from controlling how we enter it. When that shift happens, we become the calm in the storm. We become the ones others look to when things fall apart, not because we have all the answers, but because we have something more important: clarity. And that clarity has ripple effects. It influences how we lead, how we love, how we grow. It changes the energy we bring into rooms. It affects the way people respond to us, because when we're clear, we give others permission to slow down too. In that way, clarity is contagious, and so is composure. When we choose to live with intentionality instead of reactivity, we don't just change ourselves, we raise the emotional standard for everyone around us. The strongest people are not the ones who shout the loudest or act the fastest. They're the ones who stay present, who stay grounded, who stay conscious in moments when others fall unconscious to their impulses. They're the ones who know that nothing of value is ever built in chaos, that real power lives in the pause, and that clarity isn't a gift you receive, it's a skill you practice over and over until it becomes the way you live. Most people misunderstand solitude. They see it as a sign of emptiness or disconnection, as if being alone means something is missing, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Solitude is not loneliness. It's not an absence of people or interaction or meaning. It's the presence of something far more important: yourself. In a world constantly pulling us outward, constantly distracting us with noise and demands, solitude becomes the only space where we can actually hear ourselves think. And for strong minds, that space is sacred. It's in solitude that clarity sharpens, decisions settle, emotions cool. The strongest minds in the room are rarely the loudest. They're often the ones who have spent enough time in silence to understand the sound of their own instincts. They've built a relationship with themselves that doesn't require external validation. They're not performing, they're not chasing approval, they're grounded in something deeper, something that comes from hours spent in reflection rather than reaction. We've been trained to fill every moment. If we're not working, we're scrolling. If we're not talking, we're watching. Stillness feels uncomfortable, and so we avoid it. But strong minds lean into it. They choose solitude, not to escape the world, but to connect with what really matters. Because there's a kind of wisdom that only emerges when the world gets quiet. In the quiet, we see what's driving us. We begin to notice the thoughts we've been avoiding. We recognize what's truly important and what's simply noise. And more than anything, we learn how to be okay with ourselves. That's the foundation of emotional resilience. If you can sit alone and feel peace, you become less dependent on others for your sense of stability. You stop chasing relationships that distract you from yourself. You stop fearing silence. And when you stop fearing silence, you stop fearing the truth. Strong minds aren't afraid to face what's inside. In fact, they seek it out. They know that growth doesn't happen when everything feels good. It happens in the discomfort. It happens in the quiet honesty that only solitude can offer. Solitude gives perspective. When we're caught in the rush of life, every small thing feels big. Every disagreement feels like a threat. Every problem feels urgent. But when we step away, even for a short while, we start to see things differently. What felt overwhelming begins to shrink. What felt personal begins to lose its sting. That distance, that breathing room, allows us to return with a clearer mind and a calmer heart. Solitude resets our system. It breaks the cycle of emotional reactivity and replaces it with emotional clarity. And here's where another powerful truth comes in. Not everything is yours to carry. That's where detachment becomes essential. Detachment isn't cold. It's not dismissive. It's the practice of creating space between what happens and what you make it mean. Most of us live with tightly wound emotional wiring. One wrong word, one disapproving look, and we're spinning. We take everything personally. We attach our self-worth to every piece of feedback, every outcome, every interaction. But strong minds learn how to step back. They know that not everything deserves their emotional energy. Detachment is not about shutting down. It's about staying centered. It's about choosing which battles are worth engaging and which moments are better observed than absorbed. The mind that detaches doesn't disconnect. It reflects. It asks, is this about me or is this about them? It doesn't assume, it inquires. It pauses long enough to understand before deciding what to feel. And in that pause, strength is born. People often confuse emotional involvement with emotional intelligence. But the truth is, emotional intelligence starts with restraint. It starts with the ability to notice your feelings without becoming them. It starts with the habit of watching your reactions before you express them. That's what detachment really is. It's not about being less emotional, it's about being more emotionally aware. It's knowing when to lean in and when to step back, when to speak and when to stay silent, when to let something go because holding it will cost you your peace. This kind of reflection is a skill, and like any skill, it takes practice. It begins with observation, watching yourself in real time, noticing when your heart starts to race, paying attention to when your ego starts to flare. Strong minds aren't absent of ego. They've just learned how to keep it in check. They've created enough space within themselves to challenge their automatic thoughts. They don't believe everything they think. They don't act on every feeling. They've trained themselves to zoom out and ask, what's really happening here? That zooming out is powerful. It gives us access to empathy, to see that the person yelling at us may be dealing with their own pain, to see that the missed opportunity maybe making room for something better, to see that a delay is not a denial, it's a detour. Strong minds live with that kind of vision. They're not trapped in the moment. They're not defined by the current discomfort. They hold space for a bigger picture. And in doing so, they protect their peace while still remaining present. Solitude and detachment work together. One builds the inner strength to stand alone, the other protects that strength in a noisy world. One helps you find clarity within, the other helps you preserve that clarity among the chaos. Together, they form the emotional armor that allows strong minds to stay cool when others lose control. They provide the reset button we all need but rarely use. When you understand these tools, something shifts. You stop needing every situation to go your way. You stop expecting everyone to understand you. You let go of the idea that your emotional world needs to be constantly validated by others. Instead, you build a sanctuary inside, a place where peace isn't conditional, it's cultivated. And the beauty is, anyone can access it. Anyone can choose solitude over distraction. Anyone can learn to detach without disconnecting. It's not reserved for the few. It's available to the many who are willing to sit still long enough to listen, to reflect, to grow, and to rise above the noise. The strongest minds are not those that dominate a room. They're the ones that remain composed in it. They don't need to prove themselves because they've already done the inner work. They don't need to win every battle because they've already won the one inside. They've learned that solitude doesn't weaken connection, it deepens it. That detachment doesn't dull emotion, it refines it. And in that quiet strength, they lead, they influence, they inspire, not by what they say, but by how they stay grounded in who they are, no matter what the world throws at them. There's a small moment, a fraction of a second, between what happens to us and what we do next. In that space, we are given a choice. Do we let the situation dictate our behavior, or do we choose to lead ourselves through it? This choice defines more than just the outcome. It defines who we become. Strong minds are not shaped by the absence of adversity, but by the mastery of that moment. They don't react instinctively to every emotion or pressure. They respond deliberately, with intention and awareness. And that subtle shift from reaction to response is what separates calm leadership from chaotic impulsivity. Reactions are easy, they're automatic. They don't require thinking, just feeling. When we react, we give power to the situation. We hand over control to whatever just happened. Someone offends us, we snap. Plans change, we panic. A delay occurs, we spiral. And in those reactive moments, we lose clarity, we lose direction, and most importantly, we lose influence over ourselves. But when we choose to respond, we reclaim that influence. We pause, we assess, we ask better questions, and in doing so, we respond not to the heat of the moment, but to the reality of the moment. That's the key. A strong mind doesn't ignore emotions, but it doesn't worship them either. It respects them as data, not as directives. It uses emotion to understand the situation, not to dictate behavior. To respond means to act with purpose. It means to stand above the storm and observe it rather than being swept away. It's the moment we realize that our feelings are valid, but not always useful in their raw form. Just because we feel anger doesn't mean the moment calls for aggression. Just because we feel fear doesn't mean and those with strong minds don't abandon their values in crisis. They anchor deeper into them. It's tempting to believe that our emotions are the most authentic parts of us. But authenticity isn't about expressing every feeling. It's about staying aligned with what we truly believe, especially when it's difficult. Emotions can be loud, but they can also lie. They're shaped by our wounds, our fears, are passed. Values, on the other hand, are chosen. They're built intentionally. They're not always easy to live by, but they're always worth it. When someone insults you, your emotions may scream for retaliation. But if one of your values is kindness, you pause, you breathe, you respond in a way that reflects your value, not your emotion. When a project fails, your emotions may flood with self-doubt. But if one of your values is perseverance, you regroup and move forward. Not because it feels. Moment requires retreat. Emotional maturity begins when we can hold a feeling without letting it hold us. The goal is not to eliminate emotion, it's to integrate it into a greater system of values and awareness. Reaction is often survival-based. Response is value-based. One comes from impulse, the other comes from principle. And over time, the ability to respond instead of react becomes a form of self-respect. It means we believe enough in our values to give them the final word, not our most temporary emotions. It means we're not just reacting to life, we're leading ourselves through it. Values are the compass. When emotions pull us in every direction, our values point true north. They remind us of who we are, what we stand for, and how we want to show up regardless of the situation. When everything is calm, it's easy to claim values. But when life applies pressure, our values are tested. That's when their presence matters most. Good, but because it's who you've chosen to be. That's what strength looks like. Not being led by the emotional weather, but by the internal compass of values. This doesn't mean suppressing how we feel. It means giving emotion a seat at the table without handing it the steering wheel. Emotion can inform us, warn us, and even motivate us. But values give us the discipline to decide what's right, even when it's hard. And that discipline becomes freedom. Freedom from impulsive mistakes. Freedom from regrets born in reaction. Freedom to lead a life rooted in integrity. We all know what it feels like to regret a reaction, to look back and think, I wish I had paused. I wish I had handled that differently. That's because reaction often bypasses wisdom. It skips over reflection and lands straight into behavior. But those who live by values build in the reflection. They create a rhythm of pausing, assessing, and aligning before acting. And over time, that rhythm becomes who they are. They're not thrown off course by every offense or challenge. They stay grounded. They stay centered. Strong minds live with intention. They act not just for the moment, but for the future they want to build. And in a world that rewards quick answers and fast emotions, they choose the slower, more meaningful path. They choose consistency over chaos, purpose over panic, thought over impulse. They respond with clarity and act from values, not because it's easy, but because they know that strength is not reactive, it's responsive. In every difficult moment, there's an opportunity to rise or to regress. That opportunity is shaped not by how we feel, but by how well we've practiced honoring our values. When a conversation becomes tense, do we react with defensiveness, or do we respond with curiosity? When pressure mounts, do we collapse into fear, or do we stand firm in trust? These questions are answered not in grand gestures, but in quiet decisions. Every time we choose to respond thoughtfully, we strengthen the muscle of self-leadership. It's a practice. No one gets it perfect. There will always be moments when emotion gets the better of us. But the goal isn't perfection, it's progress. It's becoming a little more responsive, a little more values-driven with every challenge. Over time, these small acts of discipline become habits, and those habits become character. People often think strong minds are born, but they're built. They're built in ordinary moments. When someone chooses to pause instead of react, when someone chooses to speak from truth instead of anger, when someone chooses to lead with their values even when it costs them comfort. That's where real emotional strength comes from. And so the question is never, how do I stop feeling this way? The better question is, how do I want to respond in a way that reflects who I am? That's where transformation begins. Not by changing how we feel, but by mastering how we act. Not by silencing emotion, but by integrating it into a larger framework of intention and principle. That framework is built with clarity, discipline, and self-awareness. It's reinforced through solitude, reflection, and the pause, and it's led by one guiding force: the commitment to act not from emotion, but from values. Because in the end, our greatest power is not in how we feel. It's in how we choose to respond again and again until our response becomes a reflection of our deepest convictions. The strength of your mind is not measured by how loud you speak or how hard you fight. It's measured by how steady you stay when everything around you is shaking. The ones who remain calm are not lucky, they are prepared. They've built habits that help them master their emotions before emotions master them. And they return, again and again, to the discipline of self-awareness, the wisdom of solitude, and the power of the pause. You don't need a perfect life to stay cool. You need a strong mind. And the good news, that kind of strength is not found, it's built. One pause, one choice, one breath at a time.